Olá, meu nome é Marcos Frank e hoje vamos falar um pouco sobre a banda Death to All, que é uma banda tributo ao legado do vocalista e guitarrista Chuck Schuldiner, considerado o padrinho do death metal. Vítima do câncer aos 33 anos em 2001, Chuck deixou um legado e muitos admiradores pelo caminho. Death to All é formado por Max Phelps nos vocais e guitarra, Bobby Koelble na guitarra, Steve Giorgio no baixo, Gene Hoglan na bateria. E a banda tocará os álbuns aniversariantes Spiritual Healing, que faz 35 anos, e Symbolic, que fará 30 anos. E passará por Porto Alegre, Curitiba, Limeira, São Paulo e Belo Horizonte. Falamos um pouco com Gene Hoglan, o baterista, sobre como era trabalhar com o lendário guitarrista, a importância do álbum Symbolic em sua vida, e é claro, foi claro para nós dois que Human é o melhor álbum do Death, apesar da importância do Spiritual Healing e a progressão definitiva com Symbolic. Confira a entrevista. Um, Thank you so much, Gene, for the opportunity to interview you. Thank you so much for your time. Um,
Thank you, Marcos. I appreciate it. Thank you. I appreciate you being here, and I really appreciate that kick-ass Judas Priest shirt too.
yeah,
You got some screaming for vengeance there. It looks like from here, anyway.
it is. It is. It
Yeah,
is.
yeah, there you go. Excellent.
It's
Right on.
it's my favorite record.
Badass, man. That's a great title track, I tell you.
But when you think about what you did with Death, it is also legendary. So
Uh,
congratulations.
well, I appreciate that, brother. Thank you very much.
You're coming to Brazil even to celebrate your legacy with Death. 35 years of spiritual healing and 30 years of symbolic. This is something amazing to achieve. And does it feel to be part of this celebration of this legacy that transcends generations?
Well, we are very honored to be able to be a part of, such a legacy as this, such a vastly reaching legacy that the band Death has been able to achieve. We're all very honored for that. And um, there's in order to just to be a part of this wonderful celebration of a music that is still popular, is still being, counted as a life-changing style of music for so many, fans, so many younger generations of fans. That is one thing about, Symbolic, for instance, that it really has it seems to have captured the younger generation in such an exciting way that hey, we get to honor and celebrate that side. Spiritual healing, that captured a lot for the generation just a little bit older than the younger generation, so it's like we're trying to run the gamut with the best of both worlds. And that's one thing that's just super exciting for us to be able to be a part of. And that's why representing Death's music, representing and honoring the legacy of Chuck is very important to all of us because of the music and the fans. It's just, if the fans didn't care, didn't want to see us, then I guess maybe we wouldn't be doing this. I'm not sure, but this is for the fans, definitely. So we appreciate the fact that people come out to the shows and people are really excited for the shows, and all the response and feedback that we get is all really exciting. So that's very cool. We're really honored to be a part of it.
And you've, of course, played on Symbolic and considered by many fans as Death's perfect album. What was your first impression when Chuck Schuldiner invited you to be part of this masterpiece?
Well, we had gotten off the road for all the individual thought patterns touring, And Chuck knew that we had a little bit of a lot of work ahead of us. And so he had just started writing a couple of songs, and he sent me a couple of um, real bare bones demos of some thoughts and ideas. And we thought, well, instead of like kind of in, Chuck was getting a little frustrated with trying to learn a drum machine, and he had seen how good I was with mine. And I think Chuck was just kind of like, you know what? Let's, if you have the time, let's not mess around and me trying to learn how to run this cockamamie piece of machinery. Why don't we just bring you out here and you just play some live drums? We'll write some riffs and we'll just keep going every morning, every afternoon. And then at night, I'll cook us some healthy stuff and we'll really make a real good go of this. And so Symbolic just really represented it was a very relaxed, peaceful, but very focused writing sessions, writing process. So that's how that kind of turned out. We had a great time working out the songs, and that was one thing that differed. The one thing that did differ from individual thought patterns was that on Symbolic, we had the time to work out a bunch of the material. With the individual thought patterns album, Chuck had to get going on it, so we didn't have much time to get that album together. And to me, it shows. You kind of hear this kind of rushed feeling to the album, and when you compare it with Symbolic, you hear the difference in putting the songs together, the difference in scope. Because for me, Symbolic just kind of got to have like a little bit of it just kind of settled in a little bit better, had a nicer just feel to it. It just wasn't like the other way individual was. So that is one thing that we had in our favor. And um, that's one thing that definitely differed between the two. And just being able to have a real good solid focus on the material, being able, we Chuck had upped his technology a little bit. This time he had a little recording machine, had an 8-track recorder that was able to at least get us some pretty decent demos like you might have heard on any of those on the re-release of Symbolic. That was able to happen, so that was pretty good. And we were just able to move forward pretty solidly. We everything moved forward really, really easily, real solidly. And before you knew it, the album was complete.
It is super interesting also to have an insight about how Chuck worked with his music, but because he was known to never remain stagnant. During the Symbolic recordings, how did you witness this constant pursuit of him for musical evolution?
Well, that was one thing. Chuck was a very collaborative, you know, person. Like he wanted people's input. He wanted my input. He wanted me to like that was the thing. It's like he could have programmed all the drums on a drum machine, figured out how to make it work, and then handed me over the stuff and said, "This is what I want you to play." But he didn't. He was always like, "Man, I want you to, you come up with your parts. You're the one who has to play these, so you come up with your parts." And along the way, if I'm picking up a guitar and saying, "Hey, Chuck, you want to try this somewhere? You want to try this riff that you're playing? You want to try it over here?" And he'd be like, "Holy moly, yeah, sure, cool, all right, cool. I like that. I like that better than what I wrote. So cool, let's go." Um, Chuck was very collaborative. He was very open to whatever would make the music sound the best. And so that, with that in mind, we all had pretty free reign to do your thing. Like I've said many times, when Chuck is saying go sick, go nuts, do your thing, he meant it. Just like I'm cool with what you're playing, everything you're doing, I can play my riffs over. So you're great. there, and you're here because I want to play with you. So you just keep being you, doing your thing, and I'm right here with you. So that's one way that Chuck worked, and you know, I remember coming up with like some of these cool songs like Without Judgment and Misanthrope and all the some of the things that occur during those songs. And I'm like, this has got really great vibe to it, great groove. And that is one thing that I don't know that death metal was necessarily known for much of a groove then, but I mean, if you can have a really cool part that takes you off on a really cool journey, whether you're smoking some pot along to it or whatever you're doing, or like whatever you like, however you like to listen to music, I think Symbolic is a real good soundtrack to changing your mind, however you like to do that. So that's pretty good.
And you are also called the human metronome. In a various symbolic reviews I've read, and how did you develop this technical precision that became your trademark?
Wow, I just tried to do what a drummer's supposed to do and play tight. I mean, I don't think I'm doing anything all that revolutionary. Really, I try to play tight. I try to play crisp. I try to play, where the drum fills are just legible. You can understand what's going on. The drum beats. I mean, hell, even back then, I hear my faulty meter in spots. I hear it. I even especially going back to learn these songs. I hear where, oh, in this part in whatever song, you can hear me physically speeding up for a second. Because we aren't playing to click tracks or things like that back then. So it happens. So I hear it, and I'm a very human drummer back then, and so but I would just try my best, and so that's where being able to move forward and just lay a stamp down. One thing that was important to me was trying to play drum beats that maybe hadn't been played before, or you're not real familiar with. So, hey, try to come up with some stuff. Try to come up with some stuff off the top of your head. Has everything on drums been done before? And it's like, maybe, but there's a lot that I haven't heard. So try that, try that approach, see if that works. And a lot of times it did.
And if you play it today, even with Steve, the Giorgio, accompanying you, do you play it better at your point of view, or do you still like to play it like it was?
Well, a little from column A and a little from column B, because I think my drumming has improved over the years. And so this is an album that we recorded, gosh,
A long time
30
ago.
years ago plus now. So, we released it 31 years ago. And so um I should be a better player than I was back then, and I do feel like it. And at least that's one thing, is that when I recorded Symbolic, the actual physical recording session, I could not walk. I couldn't walk. I was I had thrown my back out the day before we started recording. So I had to have Chuck and my drum tech at the time, Steve Good, pick me up from the drums, carry me to the control room, and just set me on a couch where I'm sitting in this crazy position. It's like, do we got it? Is it good? Okay, good. All right, we'll move on to the next one. And they would carry me back out to the drums, and I couldn't walk, but I could play drums. And so that's one thing that I'm proud of myself of. It's like, hey, you were in the weirdest physical point of your entire life right then and there, but you still got this kick-ass album done. So just you know, take that for yourself there, Hoglan. So hey, at least I got that going. But right.
And when you think about spiritual healing, do you raise the bar for that album too, even though you weren't part of that album?
I try to. I try to bring some energy to it. And, I will freely admit when I was listening to that album when it came out, uh, I guess when they released Human, it made a lot of sense. Human made a lot of sense because I'm like, wow, this is essentially the same band on spiritual healing that it was for leprosy, meaning it's, it's Chuck and, and his same drummer Billy and, same bassist Terry. Um, but it, I'm not I'm not sure if this album is capturing the excitement for me that Leprosy did. I like all Death albums, but I've always said for no fault to spiritual healing for me in the number of albums that are, here's my favorite, here's my second, here's my third, here's my fourth, just happens to be, spiritual healing would be my seventh favorite Death album. I that's just me, and that's just
It's
when it
true.
came out.
My
Oh,
favorite is still Human. I think Human is up
that's
there
mine.
after Symbol.
That's mine.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah,
it's like
Human's mine.
it's amazing as well. So it's
Well, and that's the thing. It's like you could really hear that was where Chuck was planting the seeds for his evolution of musical journey. You could see where he was starting to get pretty melodic. He was always melodic. I mean, like something like Evil Dead off Scream Bloody Gore. I mean, that has a little bit of melody right at the beginning. That's all a pretty melodic song, really, So the melody was always there, but he just really started, adding some some steroids, adding some spice to that melody. And, and that's when Human came out. It sounded like that band was very fresh, very on top of it, not tired at all. The energy was there on Human, and that's what I'm saying. It Human made a lot of sense when it came out, because I wasn't around Death when they put out Spiritual Healing, but did you notice the difference between the energy of Leprosy and then the energy of Spiritual Healing? Then did you notice the energy difference between Spiritual Healing and Human? It was
exactly.
like, wow, boy, I got a Ferrari Maserati racehorse going on Human. This, yeah, now we're talking. And so there you go. That's the difference for me. And like I say, no fault to Spiritual Healing. We play a ton of the songs live, and it's really exciting to do so. So
And yeah, one of the critics always said that Symbolic is their perfect album and their first album for even when it comes to death music. Would you agree that Symbolic is the best album Death has ever recorded?
Well, the egomaniac in me, Gene Hoglan, the drummer on the record, would say, "Of course it is." But I mean, um, you know, hey, Human is an incredible album, and so is Individual Thought Patterns. I really just, it's whoever is saying it at the time. That is very kind of most people who say that, Symbolic is the best Death album or one of those untouchable metal albums, and Death is one of those untouchable metal bands. That's very kind of people to say that. Um, Other people, I would imagine, would disagree. So it just really depends on who's saying it, at what time of day they're saying it. But either way, I sure do appreciate it. We appreciate it. And so, hey, if anybody wants to consider any Death album legendary or perfect or timeless or the best, that's fantastic. Great. If I get to, me personally, if I get to be involved in any album that has any kind of acclaim such as that, that's exciting. That's very nice. Thank you. You take the good with the bad, though. Just because somebody says, ooh, it's the best ever, you can't take that all too seriously because there's other people saying, no, it's actually the worst ever. So it's like, if I'm not going to take this guy seriously, I can't take that guy seriously either. So, I mean, it's appreciated. It's very nice. Thank you very much for the thoughts, but um, I can't let it, you know, guide a vision for the future or anything like that. So, but I
But
sure do appreciate it. Thank you very much.
but still, what would you say? What you would say to young musicians that would learn Chuck Schuldiner's and Death legacy today on any instrument?
Well, we sure do appreciate anybody taking the time to do so. And I would imagine there's a lot of drummers would probably be going, this is pretty, kind of some crazy drums that are going on with all these guys, Sean, Gene, definitely Richard. Like, my word, Richard Christie, what in the world were you thinking? But I love giving Richard a hard time about his drums on Sound of Perseverance. Um,
Yeah.
and so I would imagine a lot of drummers would be like, wow, I got my work cut out for me. And I would think that, and this is one thing that I've heard, it's like when guitarists have sat down to say, okay, I'm gonna learn this material because it sounds so crazy to me, like the Symbolic album or Sound of Perseverance. Boy, it's really over the top technical. I think they come back. A lot of guitarists go, that was actually, a little easier than I was expecting going into it. And I think that gives them some confidence. They're like, I actually learned that. I learned Symbolic, I learned Sound of Perseverance or individual thought patterns. And I learned that. And listen to that album. It's so crazy and complicated and complex. And I learned it on guitar. And it's like, and then I think some years later when they revisit it, they're like, I understand why I was able to learn it so easy. Pretty good riffing, catchy riffing, but it's kind of the surrounding elements to the riffs that are psychotic and crazy and nuts and weird and all that. But the riffs are all pretty solid. So it's got some great riffs, so catchy, so good, melodic, and earworms, I guess is the new term for it. A whole lot of those. So we will take it, absolutely.
I just want to add something. I hate Steve because he now just plays with three chords, playing Death, and I hate him
Yeah,
so
three
much when he
strings.
does
All
that.
right.
He likes to show off.
He likes to show off. The man has a goat on his t-shirt now. So that's
Okay,
awesome. And that's I love, we give Steve some ribbon on that. It's like, hey, because he can, like,
because he can, yeah.
because he can. That's why when you are the goat, you get to do whatever you like. Absolutely.
Gene, thank you so much for your time.
Thank
I
you,
hope
brother.
to see you here in São Paulo soon. And please leave
That's
a
gonna be very
message to
soon.
the people that might check this interview and want to go to this concert.
And this is Headbangers News, right? Because I just have
Yes.
HBN written down.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody from Headbangers News. This is your big buddy, Gene Hoglan. And I just want to say that Death to All is coming to your town very soon. And boy, we cannot wait to meet up with all the amazing kick ass Brazilian fans and all of our friends. You guys are so amazing. And it's always such an exciting time to be able to play Brazil. What an honor that is. And when you guys bring your energy out to the show and you see our energy, boy, that is just a great mix there. And we're really excited to leave everybody with a smile on the face, smile on their heart, just where you've come out at the end of a great night of metal with memories that are going to last you for a lifetime until the next time we come back. And just thank you, everybody, for coming on out and kicking some ass with Death to All, playing the Symbolic Healing over Latin America tour. It's going to be great. Darn tootin'.
Thank you so much, Gene.
All right.
Have a
Thank
good
you, brother.
day.
All right, Marcos, you take care. We'll see you.